May give just a couple more minutes. Or like me, Rachel.
Recording this also.
Yep, and it'll be available later. And you have that link handy, right?
It towards your left hand side up. Yeah, a little bit higher. You're about shoulder. Yeah.
And whenever you're ready.
Hey, Rosa, welcome to Applique today. It's a rainy day in Oklahoma, so I hope everybody gets to enjoy this wet weather we're having and cool temperatures. My name is Gayla Mosteller. I have been a seamstress for over 50 years and teaching sewing and sewing techniques for approximately 40 plus years. It's something I enjoy very much. Sewing and fabric art is a dying technique, and I enjoy teaching it. I enjoy when new students come in and get that little gleam in their eye when they finally, get to try it out and accomplish something that they have something in the ear. I've been teaching the Applique shawl making class at Festival for several years now, and it's been a lot of fun. Each year the different ones come back and show me their completed shawl, or where they started building on their regalia. And so that's something that's is what this is about. We want you to learn some basic skills, try them out. The more you work with it, the more experience you get. And that's what we want you to do, is start building your regalia, start bringing back the arts of fabric arts. So today we're going to learn 3 different types of applique. First one will be hand applique. With the hand applique, what you're going to do is you'll have a design that is very simple. It'll be a freestanding design, and then you're going to apply it to a background fabric. The second one we're going to do is called needle turn applique. With needle turn applique, you start out with fabrics on top of each other, with the design on top of your fabric, on your fabric, and then you're going to cut and use a needle and turn the edge under as you stitch it up. And then the third applique is machine applique. This one is more popular today, just because it is faster. I guess a lot of people don't want to do the handwork because it takes longer. But to me, handwork is prettier. So these are 3 steps that we're going to be learning today. With the 2 hand appliques, all you really need is your fabric, some needle, and some thread. of course, then your pattern. But, you know, you can take it with you. And we came up a couple of days ago and did a video. So we're going to play a video of the 3 different steps. And then if you have any questions, you can type in your questions, and then we'll do some answers at the end of the video. I guess before we get started with the video, and we'll have some other, I'll make some more comments at the end of it. And if you have any questions, be sure to write them down.
Maybe as a beginner, you don't want to try it, but maybe this is a goal that you will set yourself for to do later on.
In the comment box. Can everyone hear? If not, give us a comment in the comment.
Okay, let's talk about design. First of all, I'm not an artist, and I will admit I do not draw. I look at internet a lot. I pull up clip art. I'm just not a designer or drawer. I can tweak designs and maybe sketch it out and, you know, play with it, but I pretty much go with some clip art first. There's lots of clip arts out there. There's coloring books you can look at. So depending on what you want to design with, it's open to you. With our Potawatomis, we use a lot of our nature designs. Designs are the trees, the flowers, you know, the wildflowers out there, berries. Some of the birds and animals that we've used have been in contact with through the years. First, our designs first started off with painting on our leather and things like this was our first designs. Then we went to like porcupines and pine needles and things with our designs. When the Europeans came in, they brought fabrics with us. And our ladies really got excited with the colors of the new fabrics. And the fabrics back when they first started coming were taffeta. Taffeta is a fairly bright colored fabric. It's got a tight weave to it. That's why I think we have a lot of designs that we got into the needle turn, is because it would hold its crease. A lot of our designs back then, the ribbon would come in like 3-inch strips. And so that's why a lot of our designs are based on a 3-inch design pattern. And so then by merging 2 pieces, you know, you ended up with a 6-inch design. And so that's kind of a base of where we first started. Then there was also the different colors that came in. And as you can see, the brighter that we really like. And the bright colors like this show up on the dance arena. If you've gone to Red Earth, if you've gone to see the powwows, you've seen our dance costumes, they are getting more elaborate every year. They've gone from basically cottons into our satins and our taffetas, sequins. We see a lot of sequins in the dance regalia now. All of these are possible to design with. A new area that's really kind of coming up, and that's with the new design machines, is the machine embroidery. That's basically a lot of applique with the satin stitches, and it's machines doing it for you, not us doing it ourselves. And that's, a lot of people are doing that these days. I still prefer doing some of the machine applique. I think it's a lot of fun, get creative. So one of the ways to start a design is to, if you've got a picture of a design you'd like to use, or if you have a family design that comes down through the lines, you can use that in your application. The design we used today, as I said, it reminded me of my bleeding heart that's in my garden. And so with that, it's based on a 3-inch design. If I wanted to turn that into when we design, like especially for our dance dresses, regalia, the ribbon strips that we put on our dresses, on our shawls and different things like that, are generally mirror imaged, or then they're mirror imaged left and right, and then they're mirror imaged top and bottom. So if you go back to the old days of making snowflakes, you took your paper, you folded it in half, found your center, and then folded it again. And then you can draw design, and like I said, I'm not a designer, but you want to keep your folded edge together. You don't want to cut this corner out or cut it apart without leaving that there. So I'm going to just, try drawing a design. We'll see what happens here. So I know that the little strip holding it together works really well. And I'm going to attempt to make an oak leaf. How about that? That's a little bit not pointed. And that's not too bad. And then I'm going to come in and I'm going to do a half of an oak leaf, because I want to keep my design, and I don't like that here. I'm going to do a couple more little, as I said, I'm not a drawer, but we can see what happens here. So now I'm going to get the scissors and I'm going to cut it out. Okay, so now we're going to see what happens. Looks like a little oak leaf. So I could do once I get this, if I want to use coloring pencils or colors to work out designs, I can do that. It's like, okay, I want to do a little something here. Let's do a little hole in the middle of that. Just come in and make a little hole inside. I kind of like that a little bit better. gives it a little bit more. And that way if I had 2 tones or even 3 tones, that would work. So in this design, we have basically a design, it's mirror imaged on both sides, just alike, and then it's placed on a second backing that has the stabilizer on it, and then satin stitched around. I have another piece that we created that we mirror imaged the fabric. So with that, you sew your 2 pieces of fabric together first, then you use your heat and bond and apply it to the back of the design. Now, this is a mistake. This is just something I've grabbed out of my stash just because I knew I was going to talk about it. The seam allowance was not lined up properly. So you want to be sure that you do line that up with the peaks and valleys. So this was a mistake, and I don't call them mistakes, I call them learning curves. So, you know, this was one of my students that did this, and she immediately realized, oh, I missed that little peak valley down here. And so then when she cut out the rest of them, she paid more attention to make sure that she got this in. So, as I said, we don't make mistakes, we have learning errors, and we take that by learning from it. So you can use a combination of different colors. You can use 3 layers if you want to. You know, just be open with your designs. Look online through some clip work. You know, even with coloring books. I know we've got the Potawatomi coloring book here. There are several designs in here that I kind of got an idea from. This was the turtle. You know, that would be a fairly easy applique to do. You don't have to do all of the designs inside. You could leave it with fabric, you know, use a fabric that looks like a turtle's back or whatever. Or be creative and use your separate, you know, different fabrics by doing this applique technique. I'm going to be showing you a piece later. This is a design that I got off the internet. And so I have broke it down. I think you got it in your package. This is a more advanced applique, and this is the fusible applique that I'm doing. But what I've done is I've come in and numbered all the pieces that are in units. So this flower has all their little petal numbers. The leaves all have their numbers. The hummingbird has its numbers. And then I drew the design off already reversed for you, so that when you come in and, you know, if you download this design, if you go in and print it off, then you can use your heat and bond and heat and bond light. Now there's 2 different versions of heat and bond, but you want to be sure and do the heat and bond light. Then you are ready to fuse it, and then you're going to fuse it to the back side of your fabrics so that you have your fashion side out. And then we will actually go in and place it together. And you'll see that in some of the design, it's got little dot lines. That means it's going to overlap. So if this flower is like this, then you're going to come back in and overlap it. And so I will show you at the end the finished version of this applique. So, you know, maybe as a beginner you don't want to try it, but maybe this is a goal that you will set yourself for to do later on as you advance with your skills. Meg Witch. Okay, for this step of the hand applique, we're going to start off, we've selected our design, and we're now going to transfer it to freezer paper. And once we transfer it, you just use a pencil. If you have a light box where you need to see, you can use a light box. But usually you can see through the freezer paper fairly easy. So I'm going to draw out my design. This is a simple floral design with our Potawatomi. We do use a lot of our use a lot of floral designs with our appliques. You're going to cut out the design on the line. As a beginner, the larger the design, the softer the curves, the easier it is as a beginner. As you get more advanced, then you can get into a little bit more detail, and then even to smaller designs. But as a beginner, it's best to use a cotton fabric. Cotton's a little bit easier to work with than some of your satins or your taffeta. They, doesn't shine like the satins do, but it does work better and easier for you to work with as a beginner. Okay, I have ironed the freezer paper, which is a waxy side, to the back of my fabric that I'm going to use as my applique. I'm going to cut the fabric out about 1/4 inch away from the freezer paper. This will be what you'll turn under. You want to be cautious with when you're adhering your wax and things, that if you get it too hot, it'll melt it and not stick at all, so you may have to start over. So a cooler iron versus the hot iron is better. You're then going to clip little notches all the way up to your design edge, and especially in your peaks and valleys. And I'm going to come to the larger size. Okay, once you've clipped all the way around, you're going to turn the raw edge up over the back of the freezer paper and do a little finger pressing. Slide that all the way up tight to the paper and then press. At this point, I would use a dry iron, not a steam iron, because your fingers are close. And with it being cotton, it should hold the crease. And if you need, you can get a little bit of sizing or spray starch. Wet your finger and just press the edge of it, wet it there, and then iron again. And it holds that crease better. You're going to work yourself all the way around your design. And if you get a kink or something that's not quite working, iron it back out flat, start over. It just takes a little time. Okay, once you get your design completely ironed, then you have your motif ready to be appliqued by hand. Very carefully, just pull the back freezer paper off. And then you can see that it's held all of its shape. And we're going to apply it to our foundation, whatever we choose to put it at. This is just going to be a sample. So you can place it in place. Use a few pins to hold it in place. So now we're ready to hand applique. You want to choose a thread that's either close to your foundation or that's going to be close to the color close to your applique. You want to make sure that you tie a knot, and you want to use the smallest needle that's comfortable to your hands. The smaller the better. This is a size 9 needle. So the higher the number, the smaller the needle is. As a beginner, you may want a longer needle. But I like this size 9 because it's easy for me to really get in here and get close to the design. So you're going to put your knot on the back side of your fabric. And when I make my stitch, what I'm doing is I'm going to pull the needle up from the bottom, go back down straight to the off the edge of the applique fabric into the background fabric, and then just pivot my needle a little bit and travel about 1/8 of an inch, 1/4 of an inch. The smaller your stitch, the better. And then you're just going to pull it. I use one thread, not doubled, so you can see I've got the edge of the thread using one layer of thread, not 2 layers. This gives a more hidden look. And then once again, I'm going to go down right beside the outside edge, and then come back up and travel around. One of the nice things about doing hand applique is you can carry it with you. If you want to watch TV at night, waiting in the car, picking up kids after school, you know, this is something that you can carry and enjoy. If you're like me, I enjoy doing things with my hands. And then have something at the end that's, you know, usable and fun, and I've enjoyed it. Okay, I'm going to come up to, I'm going to break my thread and come up to another area so you can see what I've done there. I'm going to come into a peak and valley so you can kind of see what happens there. And so let's start over here on the edge. This will be coming into a corner, and I don't know if you can see here or not, but I've got just a little bit of a tuck, but I can go ahead and pull that needle under the edge of that fabric under just a little bit more to make it smoother. But let me get on the back side here again. Now, when I get up here to the very tip corner, what I want to do here is I'm going to take a stitch to the right, come back up in the very same spot. Now I'm going to move straight to the very tip of the, I don't know if you can see that with my thumb in the way or not, but anyway, you're going to take another stitch, come back up in the very same spot, and then come over to the side with the very same spot. So what I'm doing here, I've got my corner of my design, so I've made a stitch that comes off here, then go back in, stitch here, comes off here, stitch, and then comes off to the side. That way it protects this whole little corner from unraveling, coming back out, and it really holds that little point really nice. Okay, we're going to travel on down. And we're going to get down, we'll take a couple of big stitches here so I can get down into the valley. And I want to make sure that I've got my stitches going and everything's turned under. If you need a couple of little pins, go ahead and use them. I've sewn enough that I don't need the pins. I just need enough to anchor it into place, but to have pins, it sometimes gets in the way. So if you can, work with it and learn to do it not with using pins, you're going to find out that you're not going to tangle your thread up as much. So same thing kind of with the peak of the design. We're going to go into the valley this time. And you're going to come back up in the very tip of that valley. And then back down, and then to the side. And then back down, and then you can start traveling again. So I will show you on paper again. Okay, when you get to the point, you want to really secure this point. So you're going to bring your needle up and down. And you're going to come out, go under, back up in the same point, go out, come back up in the same point, and stitch again. Okay, in the valley, you're going to come up. You're going to swing out with your stitch, come back up in the valley, go down, come back in the same spot, and back down. So you end up with this corner very secured. Okay, for this next applique, it is still hand applique. I have selected a design that I believe you've gotten online. This is a little bit more detailed applique, but what I've done is I've traced my design onto cardstock. Once I've stitched it to cardstock, I place it on, first of all, I selected my fabrics, and I've got 2 layers, the same size, top and bottom. So depending on which one I want the top, which one I want the bottom, I'm going to trace my design on the top. So I just use a pencil. That works really well. You're not going to see the pencil line once you get through. So trace around your design all the way around. Okay, once you've done that, then you need to prepare your fabric. And what I do there is I run a basting stitch just to secure the fabric. And I can show you on this orange one what I've done there. You can see that I've just basted the 2 pieces together. Now what I've done here is I've got all my loose basting threads on the back that are loose. I'm not tying any knots because these will be pulled out later. And so by not having knots in it, then it's easier to pull out. So that's preparing it. And with this method, you don't have to worry about pins. When you're doing needle turn applique, if you have pins in there, you're really going to get a lot of tangles in your thread and stuff because you are going to wrap your thread around the needle, and you don't want that. So if you can, learn to not use it that way, to not use a needle, then you're going to, or not use pins, you're going to have more success. Now, I'm going to still use the small size 9 needle, and I'm using a green so that you can see it better for, for the video. So if you can see my lines, I've already got a couple of threads that I need to go ahead and pull out. Do your turn without, and just clip it off there. Now, I'm using taffeta with this one. You can use cotton, you can use satin. Taffeta is one that creases a little bit easier. I do use a needle to start off sometimes if I can't get it to cooperate, but once you get it started, it works pretty well. So you always want your knot on the back side. And use your fingernails. There's a few things that once you get the first couple of stitches in, it starts running really smooth. But same thing like we did with the other applique. You're going to bring it up, go right back out this edge where you were, travel forward. And what I'm doing here is I'm using my needle to roll the fabric under on that line that I drew. Okay, so you can see how that's going. Okay, same thing. We're going to skip over a little bit. Here's a point here, so I'm going to go ahead and prepare a little bit right in here so that we can see what's going to happen with the peak and valley. Now, I'm only cutting the top layer. I'm not cutting down through the yellow, and it's best to only cut a few inches at a time so that as you get to it, you're not having all of this flopping around. So it's better to just cut a few inches at a time, work that in. You can cut this extra away. So we're going to skip over here. Normally I've gone all the way down, but we're going to skip over. And we're going to come over and start with the valley over here. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and turn that under. I've got this tucked under, and I've done some what's called finger pressing on that line. And I need to finger press my point so it's nice and sharp. I'm going to use the tip of my needle, place it underneath on that line, and just fold the fabric over. And do what I call a finger press. Really press it under. There we go. With this being taffeta, it does hold its crease a little bit better. And now you can just tuck that under, and you've got a nice little point. Now, I've got a little bit of a hair poking out right here. But I can just take my needle to pull it under a little bit, and then take my stitch. And then come out to the end, just like we did in the previous applique, where we take the stitch out to the side, come back up to the same pivot point there in the center. Going to go right off the edge of the point. And then to the left of the point, and come back up in that same area. That just really secures that point and gives you a nice sharp point. Then you can proceed on around using your needle turn. By clipping it about 1/8 of an inch away from your stitch line, that allows you to do the finger turn, needle turn, without having to do a lot of clipping, and it holds it in shape pretty well. Once we have completed our design, our needle turn all the way around, then you can applique this to a bag. With this being a small one, I would apply it to like a dance bag, maybe an apron, something along that. But this is your completed needle turn applique. Now, usually when we do our design, and we're going to talk design, we do opposites. So this would be opposite of the green, the orange and yellow here. I've got the yellow and orange on this side. So that would be our opposites there. And on this one, you can either turn this under and continue with the hand applique, or you can sew the two pieces together and then have your design mirror image like that. There's another step that you can do if you're not happy with the raw edge or the your edge of your applique. You can come in with some embroidery floss. I use 2 strands, and you don't want your thread very long. You want about maybe 18 inches or so, and always put your knot on the back side. And so you're making little X's is what you're doing, and you want to keep the thread down closest to you so that you're not crossing over it. So you're just going to take a stitch at the edge of your applique. You're going to pull it up. Don't pull too tight. You want this to be a fairly loose stitch. And I like to work left to right, or right to left, as my needle is coming up. And you want to be sure that that you keep the thread from overlapping. You don't want to cross under it or over it. And the reason it's called a briar stitch is because it looks like some of the briar bushes that we have out in the field. So you can see the briar stitch. So you can go all the way around with that briar stitch. There's other stitches you can use also. You can go online. There's some one's called a blanket stitch. What you're going to find out is if you'll look under the quilting applique, on the internet, you're going to find a lot of the same type of work. It's just got different names to it. So, you know, we've been doing it a lot longer. The quilting world has kind of picked it up over the years, but we've been doing it for, you know, hundreds of years now. And the new quilting world has kind of picked up on what we've been doing. So, hope you enjoy it. Okay. We're going to get ready and do some machine applique. Once again, you have your design, and we're going to use the same design we used before. And I'm going to trace it on what's called Heat and Bond Light. Heat and Bond Light is a fusible web that is on paper. Back in the day, we used to use stitch witchery, which is the adhesive bonding, but with the paper side of it now, it makes it a little easier for tracing your pattern and for adhering it. Now, one of the things you need to be cautious about using the heat and bond is that your design is reversible. If it's not reversible, you need to make sure that you reverse your applique, your design first before you draw it on the heat and bond, because when you apply the heat and bond to the back side of your fabric. And so if you had a design that is supposed to be facing to the right when you're looking at it, and you just draw it, it's going to come out looking left. So be aware of that. That is a big, and a lot of designs that you can find out on the internet and stuff like that will make sure that it does say reversed design before appliquing. So once again, just trace it off on paper, or on your heat and bond, excuse me. And you want to draw this on the line all the way around. If you have trouble seeing your design, you might use a light box. You might use a window. You can tape it all up onto a window. Use that as your light box source. If you have a glass top table, put your lamp underneath the table, and that will also serve as a light box. But I've got my design pretty dark so that I can see it nice and I'm able to trace it just like it is. If you make a mistake with your design, you can either come back and erase it or just redraw and know where you're wanting to, which is the correct line to cut on later. Okay, so we've got our design finished. So I'm going to roughly cut out the design about 1/4 of an inch all the way around, so that whenever I cut the design out totally, it is, the adhesive is all the way to the edge. So you want to be sure to leave a little bit of, you know, the fusible out to the edge. You're going to place it down and just iron it. Now, when you iron, you want to you follow the directions, but you want to use your, not use too hot of an iron, and you don't want to heat it for very long. 8 to 10 seconds is about all you need. And then you're going to come back, and that's good and adhered to it. So then you're going to come back and cut it out on the line. If you've been to festival in the past several years, we've had this applique class in the shawl making class. So we've done a lot of appliques. I've had a lot of people come through and make shawls, so they put this on their shawls. Okay, Now, because I've got this adhered to it, you can't just peel it away, because if you start peeling it away, you're going to cause your fabric to fray. So I like to use a pen and just make an X in the paper side. And it just tears it just a little bit. It doesn't tear the fabric, and then you're able just to peel that away. And the wind behind me is blowing some of my stuff, so, but that's okay. We'll make it work. All right. So now I'm going to apply it to my foundation. And as you can see on the back, it's got a stabilizer. This is the woven stabilizer. And so I'm going to put my design just like I want it. And you need to play with it a little bit. If you need to center it up, whatever, you be sure that you get it centered up. If you're working on a shawl, you want to draw you a line, divide, if you're going to have 4 or 5 different appliques, you want to get those prepared ahead of time and have them placed where you want them, because once you hit the iron to this, they are affixed to the design. You can't remove it. So make sure that you have it in place like you want it before you iron it back down. So as you can see, don't know if you can see it well, but there is a shiny side, and that is the adhesive glue that is on the back side of the satin. Now, with that being said, we normally use the shiny side of the satin, but with applique, you're not set to having to use the shiny side. If you want to use the dull side, go ahead and use the dull side, reverse side of your fabric. Same way with cottons. You can use cotton fabric. So if it's pleasing to your eye, then you can use whatever you want. And with adhesive applique, you do not have to worry about straight of grain, unlike hand applique or some other types of applique. But with adhesive applique, you can use stretchy fabrics, you can use sequin fabrics, things like this that you can't do an easy needle turn applique with. So feel pretty free. You have free range with using this type of applique. So once again, I'm just going to press, and do not overpress it. If you overpress it, you're going to melt the adhesive, and then it's not going to stick. All right, so now we are ready to go to the machine. I'm going to use a contrasting color, and you can do that, or you can use matching color thread, but I'm going to use mine contrasting so that you can kind of see it a little bit better. I have my machine set for a zigzag stitch. It's about a 3.0 or 3 millimeter width, and I've got it set at a 1.5 in length. You can adjust this width, zigzag width or stitch length to whatever setting you like. This is going to be a little bit more open design. Something else you may want to consider is if you have what's called an open toe foot on your machine. This way you can see where the needle is actually going. If you see here that there's no bar or anything like that inside, so you're going to be able to see the needle exactly what's happening. And but if you don't have that, don't worry, you'll be fine. Some machine companies also have clear feet, so if you have access to a clear foot, then that works also. Okay, so once you have your machine set up, you're ready to start stitching. You never want to start on an end, a tip, a corner, anything like that. You want to kind of start in the middle so that you can kind of work into it. So while I'm stitching, my needle, when it goes to the right, is going to drop off my design, and as it comes in, it's going to stitch on the inside. And I'm going to just turn it a little bit just to see my design. It's a little bit wide, so I'm going to knock it down to about 2.5, see if I like that better. Yeah, I'm gonna like that better. Okay, so I'm gonna start sewing. Now there's several things you can do as you're stitching. As you're stitching, it's going, as I said, off the left to the right. As I come into this corner, it's going to stop at the right, and let me draw what I'm doing. Okay, as I'm coming into this corner, I've been zigzagging, and I want the needle to stop inside the fabric right here. And if you will, put your needle down. As we pivot, your machine is ready to take a jump to the, now, because it jumped to the right, it's going to be wanting to take a jump to the left. So hand turn your needle where it comes up and right back in the same position. So, and then we'll take off sewing again, and it's going to start sewing left and right and left again. This way you don't have buildup in that corner of the machine. Okay, my needle is now in the left position. I'm going to raise the presser foot up, pivot, and it wants to jump to the left, but I'm going to basically move it where it's stitching right back in the same spot, and now it's going to jump back to the left, and I'm going to move it right back to where it was. And now it's going to start stitching again, and it'll jump to the right. This way you don't have a buildup of excess stitches in that corner. Okay, the idea of doing applique is the needle is going left and right, left and right. You want your stitch to be parallel as you're twisting. So as you're coming around a corner, you want to take only a few stitches and slightly pivot. That way whenever it gets ready to stitch again, and if you need to, you want to stop with the needle in the outside position as you're doing a concave turn, and then you stop and pivot. So the slower you go and the more pivots you do, the more perfect you have. You know, in class we have a lot of people that get excited and they start going fast, and it's all of a sudden they're, you know, way up into their fabric, and it's like, oh, wait a minute, don't worry about it. Don't panic. It can be taken out and we can start over. Okay, so we're doing a point, and I'm going to draw out what's going to happen on this point. So I'm zigzagging, and I want to stop with my zigzag on this outside of this point. I'm going to put my needle down, pivot, and now it's ready to take a jump to the left. So now I'm ready to let it go ahead and do its thing. So you're just leaving that needle in the down position. You're going to swing it all the way around so that you're ready to go back down this other side. Okay, so we've got down to the point, and my needle is in the right position all the way down at the very tip of my design. So I'm going to raise my presser foot up, pivot my hoe design so that whenever it gets ready to start, it's going to jump back to the left, and then it's going to come around the corner. There we go. And like I said, if you'll stop it every few inches. the slower you go, the more accurate it is. And this does take practice. And I'm coming into another valley, so I'm going to want the needle to be in the left position inside the valley. And same thing, just pivot back out, and it's going to jump to the right. I didn't let it do it manually. There we go. Okay. And then we're ready to go again. Machine applique is one of my favorites to do. It's a little bit faster. I'm a seamstress, so I love working with my sewing machine. So I think that's why I like the machine applique more. And with the new fancy machines, there are a lot of fancy stitches that you could be using, you know, depending on your machine. Let me give you a cautious thing on the machine right now. If you are sewing and you have what's called bird nesting, that means where there's a glob of thread underneath your machine. 99% of the time, it is due to you've missed the tension in the upper part of your machine. So stop, rethread the top area, make sure that you've got it seated down into the tensions, and you shouldn't have any problems. Some of the problems we've also had with beginners is they forget to put the pressure foot down. So be sure that you have the pressure foot against the fabric, against the base of the machine, and you should not have an issue with that. Other than that, that's, you know, it just takes practice. Slow it down and enjoy. Thank you.
All right. You should be unmuted and ready to go.
Okay, can you hear me now?
I'm going to make everyone allowed to talk.
Okay. Are you ready to start yet?
Can you ask Lord?
Does anybody have a question? You should be able to audio your question. Well, someone asked about the needle. Asked about wanting more, I guess, video or more video on it. Brighter reds that you see that. Okay. Let me show you the finished product once again. What I did on this was I drew my design on my yellow fabric, which is the top layer. And then as I started stitching, I would cut a little bit and turn the edge over with my needle as I was sewing. And another question was, how close is the stitch? It's really just, you're almost stitching in a little fold of your applique piece. And then going down into the background fabric. You see my stitches on the back side a little bit better.
Bring it closer.
Bring it closer. So sorry, I left some things here and then I brought some things back home. So do the needle turn again. A little bit so that I'll show you again.
We have a question. Someone raised their hand. Did you trim the material that you're actually appliquing, the design material, before or after you basted it to the backing material?
After. And you can see on this piece, that I've got my design drawn on the applique fabric. And then I'm trimming about a quarter of inch from the drawn line so that I can turn that under. And I just trim this little piece up here. So
So you're trimming as you go.
I'm trimming as I go. And the reason you want to do that is if you try to trim it all out, if you didn't get to it right away, you're going to start having raveling happening. And you want to avoid the extra raveling because then it makes it difficult doing the needle turn. Now, when you do the, with the freezer paper where you're pressing it, then you have a little bit larger seam allowance that you're turning under. And by pressing and starching it, it holds it from fraying as much also. Does that help?
Yep, that's exactly what I needed to know.
Okay. You want to see the stitches? Or is this?
No, that makes sense. It's just a little whip stitch right along the edge. And then we do decorative top stitching on top of that.
Right, yeah. And then if you want to come back and hide your imperfected areas, you can either leave it like this or you can come back and do a embroidery type stitch on top of it to add more color, to define the design with it, with a third color in there. And there's several different stitches you can use if you wish. Now, something you might want to do too, I have some notes after doing the video the other day. If you're doing the hand applique for like a regalia skirt, the ribbon work on these skirts are a little bit stiffer. So you may want to put the stabilizer on the back of the design once you get it completed. The thing with I always put it on whenever I'm doing machine applique because it gives you the more support. It prevents it from tunneling, your stitch from tunneling when you're doing it on the machine. I like doing it without the stabilizer on hand applique just because it's softer. That if you are going to put it on a dance regalia and you want the stiffness, then come back and adhere it to it after you get your design completed. That makes sense? That way you have it's a little bit stiffer. And if you're doing in some of the regalia dance dresses or skirts, you know, we put them 2 or 3, this is the same age, 2 or 3 of them together in a line. You have to go down the front of the dress or around the bottom of the hem. So by putting this on, you know, a heavier stabilizer, then you can sew it to your gabardine skirt. It also makes it easier to, you know, decide you're going to change it up some, you can unstitch it, and then you haven't messed up your applique, or it's not permanently sewn to that piece, and you can, you know, repurpose that piece of artwork. Any other questions? We answer all the questions that were typed in. I think somebody asked how deep the stitch was, and it's just barely in the fold, maybe an 1/8 of an inch into your design work. I had a couple of other notes that I made myself after watching the video. Going back to the design work, beadwork is also another design you can look at for applique. You know, I've done beadwork. Beadwork is, you know, you can't really carry it with you because you've got all the little beads and things with you. So by turning your beadwork designs into applique, then you can, you know, design that way. In the beginning of the video, I showed you the picture of the hummingbird, and I thought I'd show you the end results. Here's a dance bag that I've done with the hummingbird. This was all adhered to the heat and bond, and then I placed it in position. When you are putting this together, if you have what's called an applique sheet or some parchment paper, you can put your original design underneath and then place your applique pieces on, and then touch it with a medium iron, just enough to hold the pieces together. Once you get it all together, then you can pull it up as one piece, place it on your foundation fabric, and then adhere it down, and then do your zigzag or applique stitch around the edge. This is done by machine. So you've got that pattern, and I hope you challenge yourself to do this one also. Any other questions or comments? Even any other sewing questions or regalia questions?
Do you have any suggestions for patterns for making like ribbon skirts or anything like that for someone who is good at sewing but just getting started with regalia?
The standard on the market, if you use a pattern, there's several patterns on the market. Basically, you're looking for a elastic waist skirt, or a skirt that's fairly, not real full, but fairly fitting, but yet has enough room to move. You want to be able to walk in it. You want your skirt to be as close to the ground as possible. If you have a shorter skirt, then we usually wear leggings with it that touch the ground. So if that helps there. I like to, if I'm putting ribbon on my skirt, so that's an area that I see a lot of people commenting on a couple Facebook pages I'm on about how they stop the ribbon from puckering. And that is use a smaller stitch. There's several things you can do to prevent the ribbon from puckering. One of them is to use a smaller stitch, loosen the top tension a little bit, probably 1 point or so, so that it's not pulling it. The bottom is not pulling it and making it tunnel. It makes just lets the stitch lace softer. Something else you can do is to really starch the skirt where you're going to be applying your ribbon to. And another option is the fabric for our skirt. We usually use cotton, and you have a warp and a weft in your fabric. So if you went with salvage to salvage, you're going to have more stretch coming sideways. But if you turn your fabric sideways, where the salvage is at the hem and the salvage is at the waist, then you don't have as much stretch. So if you can turn your fabric that way, you don't have as much stretch in your fabric. Go ahead and starch it, and you'll find that you don't have as much puckering happening with your ribbon on that point also. Always pre-wash your fabric, especially if it's 100% cotton. Now, one thing you do when you pre-wash it, you are washing the sizing out of it. So you want to make sure that you're ironing it back, putting sizing back into it, sizing or starch. I prefer sizing, especially with regalia making. For one reason is sizing is a synthetic type of a stabilizer starch, where starch itself is a protein base, which means if you didn't wash the starch out, you're going to have, because it turns to sugar, you're going to have bugs and things that want to come in. So if you're really working with a regalia that's not being washed very often, you don't want to use starch because you don't want your bugs coming in and attacking your fabric and things. So try to find sizing if you can. You can usually find it at the grocery store. I've seen it at Walmart, but most of your grocery stores will carry a sizing. If they don't, ask the manager to buy some. It's the same price as starch, but and it works just like starch. In fact, I like it a little bit better because starch, if you're using a polyester fabric, you end up with flakes from the starch, because starch is made for more cotton fabrics, which will then absorb into the cotton, and then when you iron, then you don't get the flakes. If you're using any kind of a polyester blend with your fabrics, if you're using starch, you're going to have the flakes that flake up on it, and you don't get that with the sizing. Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
Questions? Be bashful.
Yes, can you talk about how you would do the applique all the way around, like the edge of a shawl? You had individual pieces. How do you put those, that orange and yellow, all the way around?
Okay, good question. I've got a couple pictures. Maybe in my box. What I do when we have a shawl class. And maybe I can talk you through it. I don't have it with me. So on the shawl, I take a chalk and draw just because my ruler is 6 inches wide, you can use whatever length you want. My ruler is 6 inches wide, so take my ruler and draw a straight line all the way across the bottom of my shawl. And then I decide how many appliques I want to put on it. Let's say we're going to do 5. So I would fold my shawl up, find my center, and then place my first applique center on that the 6-inch line plus in the center of the shawl, and then measure the 4 more out to the side. And then once I get them in place where I want them, because they're done with the heat and bond, then we can just adhere it into place. Now, if you're going to do the hand applique with it, you would want to base those in place where they're at. The same technique, you're just going to draw your line, place it down, and then stitch around it individually. Another option you have is to basically have the fabric. Most of our designs are, like I said, 3 inches, or you put them together, then they're 6 inches. So you could actually sew a piece of satin strip the width of your shawl, and same thing there. Sew all your designs on your strip first, and then sew the strip to the shawl. That way you don't have the stitching on the back side of your shawl showing if you did it this way. If you are appliquing straight to the shawl, you want to make sure that you have your bobbin thread matching your shawl so that it's not shining on the back side. That helps?
Yes. A follow-on question though, like that design you're holding there has a bar at the bottom. And if you were going to make that go all the way across and connect, but you didn't want to have that strip of silk, how do you join it?
I would continue the bar between the different stitches, different top of the applique. So you want one continuous piece without.
Yeah, so that bottom white rectangle, when you put the next piece down, how do you connect those 2 pieces of the rectangle to make it look good?
Just cut this bottom band off, and then do one little ribbon on it across, and attach it that way. Or if you want to take your 60-inch wide, let's say your white applique, then same thing, you're gonna divide your satin applique piece in half, find the center, and then start drawing your designs out. And then you can cut and make it, 60 inches wide. 'Cause that's how wide your fabric will be without having a single ounce in it. Longer than that, you're going to have a single ounce somewhere. Is that what you're asking?
Do you have, I think you showed a purple and white reverse design, maybe in the video, maybe earlier when you were talking. Can you show that again, please?
This one?
I thought there was one that was purple and white. Maybe not. I was just thinking that that had the kind of continuous design that I was thinking of.
Mm-hmm. I don't see your shawl in my phone.
I must have been making that up.
White shawl, I don't have one with designs on it. Yeah, that. I showed this a turtle earlier, and this is a little ribbon shirt I made with my grandson, which we applique on the back. So you're not just tied to skirts or shawls. You can do ribbons. Excuse me, aprons. You can do the men's vest. Some things like that. Whatever your heart desires, you can add applique to it. Any other questions?
I'm not sure if you've ever done this, but would one option be like, if you can find it, it's kind of hard to find, but like 3-inch wide, 3 or 4-inch wide ribbon, and then just like laying down your appliques one right after the other on the ribbon, and then applying that ribbon to an existing piece, so there was no actual like seams between your applique sections.
Okay, yes, you can do that. And that's basically where I was saying, if you had your satin, this could be your ribbon. And it usually is 54 to 60 inches wide. And so would be about the length of your design that you've got, unless you wanted to buy it by the yardage and cut it up and down instead of sideways. Then you can get whatever length you want it that way. This could be your satin ribbon, if you consider that. Okay, we did find a shawl that has a design like that. Let's just hand this out where you see it. See that? This is not my shawls. who I credit this one for. I grabbed it from the gift. We got it from the gift shop. Of course, so it's for sale. Yeah. Okay. What she's done here is she used fabric as her strip coming in her applique, and then she has sewn the strips down with ribbon to finish off the edge. You could also just turn the edge under if you wanted to without adding ribbon to it. So, was that what you're asking?
Yes.
Yeah. I had a lady who did a beadwork. She had a beadwork of a cross that her grandmother had done. And so we centered that in the middle of her shawl, and then she built out appliques from the center of it out because she wanted to use that design from her grandmother in her shawl. So, you know, you're kind of open to whatever really you want to design. I think I said earlier that, you know, a lot of regalia is now being made with sequin fabrics and lame fabrics and things like that. So you're open to those too. Thing with using sequin fabrics or some lace fabrics and things like that, that's a little bit harder to do needle turn with, but if you're using a heat bond and adhering it to your project, then that makes it easier to work with. And it doesn't stretch and things like that. So that's one reason I kind of like the heat bond also. If you have a straight fabric, then you're able to stabilize that fabric and work with it. Any more questions or comments or?
We have 26 minutes.
Oh, 26 minutes. Okay. So. Any other questions or? There, we did attach a link to this so that you can watch the video and go back and pause your video and re-watch it. So,
And this will also be on potawatomi.org.
and it's going to be on potawatomi.org. Okay. Oh, okay. Some of the ones in the room had said, you know, the quilt that's sitting behind me is a quilt that I had taught. It's a class I taught several years back. Some of the ladies wanted to learn quilting. And so I've always wanted to design a Potawatomi quilt for myself. And so I put a class together. And so what I've done is I've had gone through and looked at some traditional quilts or quilt blocks and put them together. And so with that, I then, you know, was also teaching them how to do triangles and how to do multiple triangles. So we turned it into a block of the month or block of the week, right? We did it in a week's time. And they really did learn a lot of beginner sewers. And so what there's three blocks at the top that are missing, and I don't remember all of the block names right off the top of my head. But I know the one, this one, is the bear paw. So we did a learn the 9 pack, plus then how to do a half square triangle. This one was something stars. And once again, they, lots of texture titles. This one is called the Chief. And this one, was called something arrow points. So we had the pointed arrows, is what this one was. This one was from Kansas. Where we traveled to Kansas, you know, we had some issues getting to Kansas, so that was my trouble in Kansas. This one is called the Road to Oklahoma, which is one of my favorite blocks to do. Is you have your patchwork triangles, you have your little 9 patch. You know, so this is one of my favorite ones to do. This one is in tobacco. The tobacco leaves on this one are actually hand applique. This one is another one that's an arrow design. Then the eagle is the last one in this corner. The triangle here is our maple leaf, and then our turtles, and this one is also an arrowhead design. Eventually, I put it together to make a kit or to make a pattern so that I can share with our members. Yes, yes, you can make a layout on things on top of it to be lined. Any other questions? Sewing questions? I might talk about our blouses we do, or our tops we do for our regalia. I don't know if you've seen some of the displays in the museum, but I know in the camp scene section, I had made the regalia for that, the dress for it. It's a yellow with a drop collar yoke. The yoke is generally longer in the back, and then they have the ruffle on the edge of it. The reason why we have the yoke deeper in the back is because, you know, our women worked in the fields, and because of the sun and stuff, they would get hot. They could pull the collar up over their head and have it as a shade as they were working out in the heat and the sun. So, you know, it's basically just a yoke that is attached into the neckline. And so if you're back in, you might, you know, relook at that blouse and look at it again and notice that. That's one of the items I did for the museum. There's several pieces in the museum that I designed. Also, that same camp design from first. Started with one of our displays in the museum. We had the fire that was in the main entrance where the men were sitting around the campfire, and they were fixed mannequins, and they had made a jacket to go on this fixed mannequin. And it's like, okay, how am I going to get this jacket onto the mannequin? Because his arms, you know, weren't the modern mannequins where you could pull the arm off and put the sleeve in and, you know, put it together. So I ended up having to put a zipper in the back seam. And so we dressed him from the front. Took Blake and I several, you know, hours to put it together, the dressing. But we did do it. We zipped him up the back, and you know, it's like, okay, nobody knows that there's a zipper back there. So it's been fun doing a lot of the different behind the scene sewing, and I do a lot of costumes for school drama, your community theaters. I do a lot of different things for those. So like I said, I've had 50+ years of sewing experience. I've been teaching sewing for about 40+ years. It's something I have always loved doing, love sharing, and I hope you can, you know, enjoy it, doing the techniques just as much as I do, and share them with your grandchildren or share them with your fellow students or, you know, friends and things like that.
Oh, would you be willing to share your email so we can contact you with more questions in the future?
Yes, Gayla Mosteller at yahoo.com. That's GAYLA MOSTELLER at yahoo.com.
I need to wrap up.
It's a sad, yes.
All right.
Any
Well,
other questions before we wrap up?
can you type that, please? Yeah, I'll type it. Okay, Gayla Mosteller at yahoo.com. All right. Close it out then.
Just curious, how many of you are from, what parts of the country are you all from?
Being shy.
They're being shy.
Oh, they put in the QA. Emily is from St. Louis
Okay.
and Jill is from Tulsa.
Also in St. Louis.
Jill says this has been wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Think of anything else?
As I said, I can't think of anything else. I've enjoyed doing the Zoom. This is my first Zoom. And of course, we came the other day and was going to practice and ended up doing the video, you know, without much notice, is kind of on the spot. So I think the video turned out fairly well for on the spot. And so, yes, make wish. See you next time.